We begin this hour with a look at Capitol Hill as Congress debates how to respond to President Trump's military raid on Venezuela. The Senate is set to vote this week on a measure to limit the president's war powers. Most Democrats oppose the president's actions. Many Republicans have been supportive, but not all of them. One of those is GOP Senator Rand Paul, who is joining us now. Senator, always good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let me ask you, sir, we've spoken to some Democrats on this, but you are in the rooms that they are not. What are they telling you about this resolution? Are any members of your party besides yourself looking to support it?
You know, I think there may be a couple of others, but for me, this is a long-standing position. I had the same position under President Obama when there was a bombing of Libya and a no-fly zone over Libya without the permission of Congress. I've been the same as far as bombing Syria or Iraq or any of these places without congressional authority. You know, our founding fathers debated this back and forth. They wanted to be different than Europe. Europe was plagued by centuries-long war fought between the different royal families, and they wanted the people and the people's representatives to make these decisions, not one person. There's less likelihood for a mistake if a whole bunch of people have to vote. And then some people say, oh, well, Congress is so feckless, they'll never vote for war. But actually, when we've been attacked, we're fairly unanimous. After 9/11, the vote to authorize the war against those who attacked us was nearly unanimous. The vote after Pearl Harbor when we were attacked was nearly unanimous. So I think we're quite unanimous in voting for war for self-defense. We've been less unanimous when it's a war of choice or a war of offense rather than defense. And so I think that this is an important debate to have. Doesn't mean I have anything against President Trump. It doesn't mean I don't even dislike the result of Maduro gone. You know, I wrote a book, The Case Against Socialism, about how bad socialism was in Venezuela. But I do think the constitutional debate is an important one.
Yeah, you've been fairly consistent. In fact, you've been consistent on this issue, as you point out, Senator. So as you also point out, there have been limits to Congress trying to limit the president's authority in cases where we haven't been attacked. But how would you say that Congress should, in this case, try to assert their power? What should they do?
Well, the Congress the Constitution divided this. The initiation of war or the declaration of war is the prerogative of Congress. So in this case, the planning for this attack in Venezuela took 4 months. We could have easily voted for a declaration of war had it been brought to Congress. People say, well, the surprise is gone. Well, I don't think anybody was surprised by this attack. And the actual details of when it would occur don't have to be given to Congress. So this is actually a debate over initiation versus execution. I believe completely that all presidents execute wars and really should have very little, if any, limitations by Congress. So, for example, there was a vote on the defense authorization bill recently. In it, they told President Trump that he can't move troops around in Europe and cannot move troops around without consultation with NATO or consultation with Congress. I actually think that's unconstitutional also. I think the president has carte blanche authority to move troops around and execute war. The initiation of war is where we come in. But I think that should be adhered to and could have been done here, even with the element of surprise, because I think that that's what the Constitution intended.
So on that point, Senator, the President of the United States has said that the United States needs to acquire Greenland for national security reasons. The president's press secretary says that the president and his team are discussing a range of options, and I'm quoting her here, Caroline Levitt to CBS News. Utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the commander-in-chief's disposal. That is a close quote from Caroline Levitt. My question to you, sir, is do you imagine a scenario where young American soldiers, airmen, guardsmen, Marines are actually training a weapon on a NATO ally of the United States? We've never been in a position, to my recollection or to my knowledge, of something like that. What would you say to the president's team when they talk about acquiring Greenland, even though Marco Rubio has told other members of the Gang of Eight that the president wants to buy Greenland, but using military force, as Caroline Levitt says, is clearly an option on the table?
It won't happen under my watch. I will do everything to stop any kind of military takeover of Greenland. What I can tell you, though, is if you want to purchase Greenland, the best way would be to try to have goodwill with the people. So first, it would probably require a vote of the people to be independent of Denmark, which I think the people of Greenland are inclined to do. And then it would have to be some sort of offer of something that makes it better to be part of the United States. We have acquired territory. I mean, half of the United States came to us through the Louisiana Purchase. Alaska came to us through a purchase. but you didn't get to those purchases like any deal or diplomacy by insulting your opponent. You get there by actually trying to please and get your opponent to agree to this, because it would have to be done voluntarily. So I see no scenario in which militarily I, or really for that matter, any of my colleagues in the Senate would support a military takeover of Greenland. I think that's bluster.
And Senator,
but at the
when you
same
say
time, I don't think it's constructive.
When you say your colleagues, the question is, of course, your Republican colleagues as well, you believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that quietly that's true also. I think there's reticence, is a nice way of putting it, on the part of most in my party right now to speak out. I think more of it needs to, because we need to try to project what is normal and acceptable. But also, I think it's counterproductive to talk about it. If you really want to take Greenland, and I had never thought about it, to tell you the truth, but since it's been brought up, and now it's been brought up, if you want to affect that, you don't do it by beating people up. The same way, like with regard to Canada, if you want Canada to do things that you wish would make our trade situation better with Canada, you don't insult them by calling them the 51st state. What you do is talk to them as peers and as a sovereign nation. Canada's our #1 trading partner. But, you know, I'm from a bourbon-producing state. They're buying zero bourbon right now because they're mad as hell.
It has hit your state hard, sir. Yep, indeed. Always good to have you, Senator. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. Thank you, sir.